Valerie Sawyer knew engines the way poets knew words, but the rusted screwdriver in her hand was a far cry from the precision tools she once commanded. An hour ago, she'd been digging through a dumpster behind Giuseppe's bakery, hoping for day-old bread. Now she stood in a rain-slicked alley, staring at a machine that shouldn't exist on these forgotten streets, a custom-built luxury sedan with an engine configuration she had designed herself 3 years and a lifetime ago. The car sat dead silent, steam rising from its hood like a dying breath. Inside, a man in a suit worth more than her entire former life waited with the stillness of a predator. He hadn't asked for help, hadn't acknowledged her existence, but Valerie could hear what others couldn't. The telltale stutter of a compromised fuel relay, the ghost tick of a kill switch buried deep in the electronic control unit. Someone had sabotaged this car, someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She should have kept walking, should have disappeared into the rain like she always did, but the machine was suffering, and despite everything she'd lost, Valerie Sawyer had never been able to ignore a machine in pain. "Pop the hood," she said, her voice rough from disuse. The man's eyes found hers in the rearview mirror. For a long moment, he didn't move, then a soft click as the hood released. Valerie's frozen fingers worked fast, bypassing security protocols she'd written herself, rerouting power through emergency channels. Rain soaked through her oversized olive parka as she worked, but her hands moved with the muscle memory of someone who had built empires from steel and silicon. 15 minutes later, the engine purred to life. The man stepped out. He was tall, immaculate, with tattoos crawling up his neck like dark ivy against porcelain skin. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and Valerie saw something flicker in his expression. Recognition? Calculation? She couldn't tell. He reached into his jacket and Valerie's body tensed, ready to run, but he simply pulled out a card, pristine white against his black leather gloves, and placed it on the hood between them. "If you ever need anything," he said in accented English, his voice like gravel wrapped in silk, "call this number." Then he was gone, the sedan's taillights swallowed by the storm. Valerie left the card where it lay. She didn't do favors for payment. She didn't trust beautiful promises from dangerous men. She had learned that lesson the hard way. She returned to her cardboard shelter beneath the overpass, wrapped herself in a donated sleeping bag that smelled of mothballs and someone else's life, and tried to forget the ghost of her past she'd seen in that engine. The next morning, Valerie woke to a sound that didn't belong in her world, the deep, resonant rumble of multiple high-performance engines synchronized like a mechanical symphony. She crawled out from beneath her tarp and froze. 3 golden stretch limousines blocked both ends of the alley, not just parked, positioned, locked in formation like a military operation. Their chrome gleamed in the weak morning light, so ostentatiously out of place that people had stopped on the sidewalks, phones out, filming. From the center vehicle, doors opened. Men emerged, all sharp suits and sharper eyes. They formed a path, and then he stepped out, the man from last night, but different. His 3-piece suit was pristine black, his hair slicked back with precision. Those tattoos on his neck seemed darker in the daylight, more deliberate, more threatening. He walked toward her, each step measured, and the small crowd of onlookers went silent. Valerie's heart hammered against her ribs. This was a mistake. She should run. She should... The man stopped 3 feet away, and, with the fluidity of someone who had done this 1,000 times before, bowed. Not a casual nod, but a deep, formal bow that spoke of tradition, of honor, of debts that transcended money. When he straightened, his dark eyes locked onto hers. "My name is Park Ye-jun," he said, and the words carried weight that made the air feel heavier. "Last night you saved my life. Today I return to settle a blood debt." Valerie's mouth went dry. Around them, whispers spread through the gathering crowd like wildfire. Blood debt, golden transport, Korean mafia. "I don't want your money," Valerie managed to say, her voice smaller than she intended. A ghost of a smile touched Ye-jun's lips. "Good, because I'm not offering you money, Miss Sawyer." Her blood turned to ice. He knew her name, her real name. "I'm offering you a position, fleet overseer for my organization. Someone tried to kill me last night, and you proved you can find what my own people missed." He paused, his gaze never wavering. "You also proved you understand machinery better than anyone I've ever encountered. I did my research. I know exactly who you used to be." Valerie's hands clenched into fists. "I'm not that person anymore." "No," Ye-jun agreed. "You're someone better. Someone who fixes machines because they're suffering, not because there's profit in it. That's the kind of person I need." He extended his hand, and Valerie noticed the scars across his knuckles. "Someone sabotaged my car, Miss Sawyer. Someone inside my organization. Find them, and I'll give you back everything that was taken from you." Everything. Her reputation, her tools, her life. Valerie looked at the golden limousines, at the crowd watching with hungry eyes, at the man whose world was as far from hers as Earth from stars. She thought of the cold nights, the hunger, the 3 years of invisibility. She thought of the kill switch she'd bypassed last night, the one built with specifications only 3 people in the world could have designed. One of them was dead. One of them was standing in front of her. And one of them was the person who had destroyed her life. Valerie Sawyer took Park Ye-jun's scarred hand and felt the world shift beneath her feet. "I'll find them, but when I do, I deal with them my way." Ye-jun's smile turned sharp. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As she stepped toward the golden limousine, leaving behind the cardboard and the rain-soaked concrete, Valerie didn't look back. She couldn't afford to, because she'd just made a deal with a devil to catch a ghost, and she knew in her bones that this was only the beginning. Welcome to Afro Soul Storybook, and darling, you just crossed a threshold you can't uncross. This isn't some fairy tale romance where the prince saves the princess. This is blood and power wrapped in Armani suits. This is a legacy stolen, and a woman ready to burn the world to take it back. Subscribe to watch more of our daily stories, and comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far this storm is spreading, and hit that like button. The alley behind Giuseppe's bakery had become Valerie's diagnostic center, though no one knew it. She sat on an overturned milk crate, her back against the brick wall, eyes closed, listening to the city's mechanical heartbeat. Most people heard noise. Valerie heard stories. The delivery truck 2 blocks over had a cracked flywheel, 3 weeks, maybe 4, before it seized completely. The taxi idling at the corner needed new spark plugs, cylinders 3 and 6 misfiring in a rhythm only she could detect. And somewhere in the distance, getting closer, was a sound that made her breath catch. A V12, custom-built, twin-turbocharged, with a firing order she recognized the way a mother knows her child's cry. Valerie opened her eyes as the sedan turned into the alley, its headlights cutting through the evening drizzle. It shouldn't be here. These forgotten streets didn't see machines like this, machines that cost more than the entire block of crumbling apartments and shuttered shops. The engine note changed, stuttered. The car lurched once, twice, then died completely, rolling to a stop 30 feet from where she sat. For a long moment, nothing happened. Rain pattered against metal. Steam began to rise from the hood. Then the driver's door opened and a man stepped out into the rain. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Valerie had earned in her entire previous life. Even from this distance, she could see the precision of the tailoring, the way the fabric moved with him like a second skin. But it was his stillness that caught her attention, the way he stood beside the dead car, not angry, not frustrated, just calculating. He pulled out a phone, stared at it, then put it away. No signal, Valerie guessed, or no one he could call. Not for this. She watched as he opened the hood, looked at the engine, and closed it again with the careful control of someone who knew that violence wouldn't solve this problem. Then he leaned against the car and waited, For what? Valerie didn't know. She should have stayed invisible, should have pulled her beanie lower and melted into the shadows like she always did. But that sound, that dying engine note, it called to her like a siren song. "It's the fuel relay," she said, her voice cutting through the rain. The man's head turned sharply, his eyes found her in the darkness, and Valerie felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. Up close, she could see the tattoos creeping up his neck, the sharp angles of his face, the cold intelligence in his expression. "I didn't bypass the security circuit properly," she continued, standing up. Her joints protested, stiff from the cold. "That's what you're thinking, but it's not the security. Someone installed a kill switch, hardwired into the ECU, probably triggered remotely. Your engine didn't die, it was murdered." The man said nothing, but something shifted in his expression. Interest, maybe, or danger. Valerie took 3 steps closer, then stopped. "Pop the hood." "Why would I trust you?" His voice was accented, precise, each word chosen carefully. "Because in about 45 seconds, 3 men are going to turn into this alley, and based on the way you keep glancing at the street, I'm guessing you don't want to be a sitting duck when they arrive." His eyes narrowed. Then, without another word, he reached inside and released the hood. Valerie moved fast. Her rusted screwdriver was a joke compared to what this job needed, but her hands knew what to do. She traced the wiring harness, found the splice point. Professional work, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Someone had installed a remote kill relay between the fuel pump controller and the ECU, designed to activate under specific conditions. "You were being followed," she said, her fingers working. "Whoever did this waited until you were isolated, then flipped the switch, probably watching right now to see if it worked." She heard the man shift behind her, heard the whisper of fabric as he reached into his jacket. When she glanced back, she saw the gun, small and black, held with the casual familiarity of someone who'd used it before. "Not at you," he said quietly. "Keep working." Valerie's heart hammered, but her hands stayed steady. She bypassed the kill relay, rerouted power through the backup circuit, and did something the saboteur wouldn't expect. She reversed the polarity on the relay itself. If someone tried to trigger it again, it would burn out completely and leave evidence. "Try it now," she said, stepping back. The man holstered his weapon and slid behind the wheel. The engine turned once, twice, then roared to life with that perfect V12 symphony. He let it idle for a moment, listening, then stepped out again. He looked at her, really looked at her, and Valerie saw the exact moment he made his decision. He reached into his jacket, the inside pocket this time, and pulled out a business card, pure white, with nothing but a phone number embossed in black. "If you ever need anything," he said, placing the card on the hood between them like an offering, "call this number." Then he was in the car, the door closing with the solid thunk of German engineering. The sedan backed out of the alley, its taillights disappearing into the rain. Valerie stared at the card for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back to her cardboard shelter, leaving it where it lay. She didn't do favors for payment, and she definitely didn't get involved with men who carried guns like accessories. She wrapped herself in her sleeping bag, closed her eyes, and tried to forget the sound of that engine, the one she'd designed in another life for clients who could afford the impossible. Sleep came slowly, broken by the sounds of the city and the memory of cold, calculating eyes. The rumble woke her before dawn. Valerie's eyes snapped open, her body instantly alert. That wasn't normal traffic. That was coordinated, purposeful, the sound of multiple high-performance engines moving in formation. She crawled out from under her tarp and stood in the gray morning light, her breath misting in the cold air. 3 golden stretch limousines blocked the alley, not just parked, positioned. The lead vehicle sat at the western entrance, the other 2 at the eastern end, forming a perfect perimeter. Their chrome gleamed despite the overcast sky, so absurdly out of place that Valerie's first thought was that she was still asleep. But the cold bit at her exposed skin, and the growing crowd of onlookers gathering on the sidewalks was very, very real. Doors opened simultaneously, like a choreographed dance. Men in dark suits emerged, at least a dozen of them, forming a corridor between the center limousine and where Valerie stood frozen. Then he stepped out. The man from last night looked different in daylight. His three-piece suit was immaculate black, his white shirt so crisp it could cut glass. His hair was slicked back perfectly, and those tattoos on his neck seemed darker, more intentional. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who knew that every eye was watching him and didn't care. He walked toward her, each step measured, and the murmur of the crowd died to silence. Valerie's instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. She was dimly aware of phones being raised, of people filming, of her life becoming very, very public in a way she'd spent 3 years avoiding. The man stopped 3 feet away. Then, with the fluidity that spoke of years of practice, he bowed, not a casual nod, but a deep, formal bow that made the watching crowd gasp. When he straightened, his dark eyes locked onto hers, and Valerie saw something there she hadn't expected: respect. "My name is Park Ye-jun," he said, and the name carried weight that made the air feel heavier. "Last night you saved my life. Today I return to settle a blood debt." Around them, whispers erupted. Valerie caught fragments: blood debt, golden transport, Korean mafia, and felt the world tilting beneath her feet. "I don't want your money," she managed to say. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Good, because I'm not offering you money, Ms. Sawyer." The use of her real name hit like a physical blow. He knew. Of course he knew. Men like him didn't bow to strangers without doing their research. "I'm offering you a position," Ye-jun continued. "Fleet overseer for my organization. Someone tried to kill me last night. You found what my own people missed. You also understand machinery better than anyone I've ever encountered." He paused. "I know exactly who you used to be, who you still are." Valerie's throat tightened. "I'm not that person anymore. You're someone better, someone who fixes machines because they're suffering, not for profit. That's who I need." He extended his hand, and she noticed the scars across his knuckles, old and white. "Someone sabotaged my car, someone inside my organization. Find them, and I'll give you back everything that was taken from you." Everything. The word hung in the air like a promise or a threat. Valerie looked at the golden limousines, at the crowd with their phones and hungry eyes, at this man whose world was galaxies away from cardboard and rain. She thought of 3 years of cold, of hunger, of invisibility. She thought of that kill switch built with specifications only 3 people in the world could have designed. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, alive. "I'll find them," she said, "but when I do, I deal with them my way." Ye-jun's smile turned sharp. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The estate sat behind walls that seemed to stretch endlessly, the kind of property that didn't exist on maps available to normal people. As the limousine pulled through the gates, Valerie pressed her face to the tinted window, watching manicured gardens and marble fountains slide past. The garage was a cathedral built to worship machinery. Valerie stood in the doorway, unable to process what she was seeing. The space was easily 10,000 square feet, with polished concrete floors, hydraulic lifts, and tool chests that gleamed under LED lighting. But it was the cars that made her breath catch. Dozens of them, each one a masterpiece of engineering, arranged like exhibits in a museum. "This is your workspace," Ye-jun said beside her. "Everything here is yours to use." Valerie walked forward as if in a trance. Her fingers traced the edge of a workbench, finding it free of dust, perfectly organized. She opened a tool chest and found precision instruments she'd only dreamed about during her years on the street. "The apartment above is also yours," Ye-jun continued. "My head of security will provide you with everything you need: clothes, credentials, access codes." "Why?" Valerie turned to face him. "Why trust me with all this?" "Because 3 hours after I returned last night, 2 more of my vehicles experienced the same failure yours did. One of my drivers barely escaped with his life." Ye-jun's expression hardened. Someone is systematically trying to cripple my organization, and they're using my own fleet to do it. I need someone I can trust, someone outside my usual circle. You don't know me. I know you fixed my car for nothing. I know you were the lead engineer at Nakamura Tech before they framed you for industrial espionage. I know you've been homeless for 3 years and never once tried to sell your knowledge to my competitors. He stepped closer. I know you're the only person who can help me, Miss Sawyer. Valerie looked at the garage, at the tools, at the possibility of redemption hanging in the air like smoke. What happens when I find who did this? That depends on who it is, Ye-jun said quietly, but I promise you this, you'll have your answers, about them, and about what happened to you. That night, Valerie stood in the shower in her new apartment, watching 3 years of grime swirl down the drain. The hot water felt like a fever dream, almost painful after so long in the cold. When she finally stepped out, she found clothes laid out on the bed. Practical work clothes, not the designer things she'd half expected. Someone had paid attention. She descended to the garage at midnight, unable to sleep, and began her real work. The first vehicle she examined was a Mercedes S-Class, black and sleek. She connected her diagnostic laptop, top of the line, already loaded with every tool she could need, and began searching the vehicle's electronic control systems. It took her 20 minutes to find the first one, a sleeper program buried deep in the infotainment system, designed to activate only under specific conditions. When she traced its code, her blood ran cold. The structure was familiar, elegant, the work of someone who understood systems the way she did. She checked the next car. Same program, different trigger conditions. The third car, the fourth, the fifth. By dawn, Valerie had examined 15 vehicles and found the malware in every one of them. Someone had spent months doing this, installing nearly invisible code that could turn Ye-jun's entire fleet into death traps at the push of a button. She sat back, her hands shaking, and stared at the screen. The code architecture was unmistakable. She'd seen this style before, had worked alongside the person who wrote it. Marcus Chen, her former partner at Nakamura Tech, the man who'd testified against her, the man she'd trusted. Valerie pulled up the program's command structure and felt her stomach drop. The malware wasn't just designed to kill engines, it was designed to collect data. Every trip, every destination, every conversation held in these vehicles had been recorded and transmitted. Someone had been watching Ye-jun's entire operation for months. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Ye-jun descending the stairs, already dressed before the early hour. "You found something," he said. It wasn't a question. "All of them," Valerie said quietly. "Every vehicle in your fleet has been compromised. Someone's been watching you, recording you, waiting. Can you fix it?" "I can remove the programs, yes, but—" I hesitated. "The person who wrote this code is someone I know, someone who helped destroy my life 3 years ago." Ye-jun's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Tell me everything." As the sun rose over the estate, painting the chrome and glass and shades of gold, Valerie began to speak. She told him about Nakamura Tech, about Marcus Chen, about the night she'd been arrested and framed, about the proprietary engine designs that had disappeared, about the evidence that had appeared in her apartment, about the trial that had lasted 3 weeks before she'd lost everything. When she finished, Ye-jun was silent for a long moment. "This Marcus Chen, he works for Nakamura Tech still," he finally said. "As far as I know." "Then it seems," Ye-jun said softly, "that Nakamura Tech has made a very serious mistake. They've declared war on me, and in doing so, they've given you exactly what you need." "What's that?" His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "Proof, and leverage, and me." Valerie looked at the diagnostic screen, at the evidence of months of surveillance, at the code written by the man who'd betrayed her. For 3 years, she'd been powerless, invisible, forgotten.
"Not anymore. Show me how to dismantle them," she said. Ye-jun's smile widened. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." Valerie had been working for 72 hours straight, surviving on coffee and the kind of focused intensity that had once made her legendary in her field. She'd removed the malware from 23 vehicles, each one a painstaking process of unraveling code and rebuilding security protocols. Her eyes burned, her hands ached, but she couldn't stop. On the fourth day, Ye-jun's head of security, a stone-faced man named Min-ho, brought her lunch and a laptop. "Boss wants you to see this," he said, setting both on her workbench. Valerie pushed aside her diagnostic tools and opened the laptop. The screen showed surveillance footage from what looked like a high-end restaurant, the kind where reservations required 6 months' notice and connections that money alone couldn't buy. She almost didn't recognize him at first. Marcus Chen had aged in 3 years, his hairline receding, his face carrying a weight it hadn't before. But it was definitely him, sitting across from a man whose face made Valerie's breath catch. James Nakamura, her former boss, the man who'd personally signed her termination papers. And sitting beside Nakamura was someone else, a Korean man in an expensive suit, younger than Ye-jun but carrying himself with similar authority. The man on the right is Kong Min-woo. He runs the Kong family operation. They've been trying to move into boss's territory for 2 years. Valerie watched as Marcus pulled out a tablet, showing something on the screen to both men. She couldn't see what it was, but the way Nakamura smiled made her stomach turn. "When was this taken?" asked Valerie. 3 days ago, day before boss's car was sabotaged. The implications hit her like a freight train. This wasn't just corporate espionage anymore. Nakamura Tech had formed an alliance with Ye-jun's rivals, using Marcus's code to compromise the fleet. They weren't just trying to destroy Ye-jun's operation, they were trying to hand it to the Kong family on a silver platter. "Does Ye-jun know?" Valerie asked. "He's the one who told me to show you." Minho's expression softened slightly. "He thought you deserved to see the whole picture before we proceed." "Proceed with what?" "The Seoul Autumn Gala. It's tomorrow night. Kong Min-woo will be there, along with every major player in the city's underworld. Boss is planning to make a statement." Minho paused. "He wants you there." Valerie looked down at her oil-stained hands, at the grime under her fingernails. "I don't exactly have gala attire." For the first time, Minho almost smiled. "That's being handled." The dress arrived that evening in a garment bag that probably cost more than Valerie's entire former wardrobe. When she unzipped it, she found a floor-length gown in midnight blue, elegant but not ostentatious. Beside it lay a small card in Ye-jun's handwriting. "You'll need to get close to their vehicles. This will help you blend in." Valerie stared at her reflection the next evening, barely recognizing herself. Someone had come to do her hair and makeup, transforming her from grease-stained mechanic to someone who might actually belong at a high society event. The dress fit perfectly, and the heels, low, thankfully, were surprisingly comfortable. When she descended to the garage, she found Ye-jun waiting beside a midnight black Rolls-Royce Phantom. He wore a tuxedo that made his usual suits look casual, and when he saw her, something shifted in his expression. "You clean up well, Ms. Sawyer." "So do you, Mr. Park," gestured to the car. "This one's clean. I checked twice." "I know. I watched you work." He opened the door for her. "Tonight, you're my date and my secret weapon. While everyone focuses on the social theater, you'll be in the parking garage listening." "Listening for what?" Valerie asked. "The same kill switch signature you found in my vehicles. If Nakamura Tech installed their malware in Kong's fleet too, it means they're playing both sides. It means we have leverage." The gala was held at the Shilla Hotel, where crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, and every surface gleamed with old money. Valerie felt exposed as they entered, convinced everyone could see the homeless woman beneath the expensive dress. But Ye-jun's hand on the small of her back was steady, grounding. He introduced her as his technical consultant, and the weight of his presence kept the curious glances from becoming intrusive questions. Marcus Chen held court near the bar, surrounded by men in expensive suits. When his eyes met Ye-jun's across the room, the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Stay close, Ye-jun murmured. We'll make our appearance, then you can slip away. They circulated for 30 minutes, Ye-jun playing the social game with practiced ease, while Valerie observed. She saw the power dynamics, the subtle shifts of alliance and enmity, the dangerous dance of people who settled disputes with violence, but dressed it up in champagne and caviar. Then, Ye-jun steered her towards the terrace doors. The parking garage is 2 levels down. Security cameras have a blind spot near the elevator on the south side. You'll have 20 minutes, maybe 30. Minho will be watching. Valerie nodded and slipped away as Ye-jun engaged Kong in conversation, their polite words belying the hatred in their eyes. The parking garage was a maze of concrete and luxury vehicles. Valerie moved quickly, her practiced eye identifying the cars that belonged to high-value targets. She didn't need diagnostic tools, not for this. She pressed her ear against hoods, listened to the electrical system's ambient hum, felt for the telltale vibration of unauthorized hardware. The third car she checked, a black Mercedes S-Class with Kang family plates, sang the same sick song as Ye-jun's compromised fleet. She checked 4 more, all infected. Valerie straightened, her mind racing. Nakamura and Marcus had compromised both organizations. They were planning to trigger a war, let the families destroy each other, then swoop in and take control of the territory themselves. She turned to head back upstairs and froze. A man stood between her and the elevator. Not Minho, someone else, one of Ye-jun's inner circle, a man she'd seen in the estate. His name was Ji-hoon, Ye-jun's right-hand man and oldest friend. "You're very talented, Miss Sawyer," Ji-hoon said quietly. His hand rested inside his jacket. "Too talented. You found the malware too quickly." Valerie's heart hammered. "You're the inside man?" "Nakamura Tech pays very well. Better than loyalty, apparently." He pulled out a gun, small and efficient. "Nothing personal, but you're about to have a tragic accident." Valerie's mind worked frantically. She was unarmed, in heels and a dress, 15 feet from a man with a gun, but she'd spent 3 years learning to make weapons from whatever was at hand. "You installed the kill switches," she said, taking a small step backward. "Marcus wrote the code, but you had access to the vehicles." "Very good. Now stop moving. Did Ye-jun ever suspect you?" "He trusts me. Trusted me." Ji-hoon's expression hardened. "That's his weakness. He believes in loyalty." "And you believe in what? Money?" "I believe in survival. The Kang family is winning this war. I chose the winning side." Valerie's hand found the Bentley side mirror. One chance. She grabbed it and twisted hard, snapping the mirror off its housing in a spray of broken plastic and exposed wiring. Ji-hoon's gun came up, but Valerie was already moving, diving behind the next car as the shot rang out. The bullets sparked off concrete where she'd been standing. She crawled fast, staying low, her dress tearing on the rough ground. Another shot, then another. She reached into her clutch, ridiculous that she'd brought it, but thank God she had, and pulled out the small pocket knife she always carried. Not much of a weapon, but the parking garage had something better. She reached the fire suppression system's manual control and slammed the knife into the access panel, prying it open. Then she yanked the lever. Alarms screeched, sprinklers erupted, flooding the garage with water. In the chaos, Valerie ran. She burst into the stairwell and took the steps 2 at a time, her heels abandoned somewhere in the flood. She could hear Ji-hoon behind her, his footsteps echoing. The gala's back hallway was deserted. Valerie sprinted toward the main ballroom, knowing her only chance was witnesses, publicity, anything that would stop Ji-hoon from... A hand grabbed her arm and yanked her sideways. She almost screamed before she recognized Minho's face. "This way," he hissed, pulling her through a service entrance. "Ji-hoon, he's the traitor. He tried to..." "I know. Boss knows. We've been tracking him for 2 days." Minho pushed her into a service elevator. "But we needed proof. You finding the kill code on his laptop was the final piece." "I didn't find anything on his laptop." "Not yet, but you're about to." The elevator descended, and Valerie realized they weren't going up to the gala, they were going deeper, to the parking garage's lowest level, where Ye-jun's Phantom waited, engine running. "Get in," Ye-jun's voice came from the driver's seat. "We're leaving, now." Valerie dove into the passenger seat as Minho climbed into the back. The car was already moving before her door closed, tires squealing as Ye-jun accelerated toward the exit ramp. Ji-hoon made his move faster than expected. The Kang family knows we're onto them. They're coming. As if summoned, headlights flooded the rearview mirror. 2 black USVs, accelerating hard. "Hold on," Ye-jun sighed, and the Phantom's V-12 roared. They burst onto the street in a spray of water from the still-active sprinklers. The SUVs followed, and then Valerie saw more vehicles joining the pursuit, at least 5, forming a coordinated pursuit pattern. "They're trying to box us in," she said, watching the tactical formation.
I know. Ye-jun's hands were steady on the wheel, his face calm despite the speeds that made the streetlights blur into ribbons. "We need to get to the coast road, more room to maneuver." The Phantom handled like a dream, but it was a luxury sedan, not a pursuit vehicle. The SUVs were gaining, and then Valerie saw the motorcycle weaving through traffic toward them. "Ye-jun." "I see him." The rider pulled alongside, and Valerie saw the gun. She ducked instinctively as the window beside her shattered, safety glass spraying inward. Ye-jun swerved hard, clipping the motorcycle and sending it spinning into a parked car. But the moment of distraction cost them. One of the SUVs slammed into their rear quarter panel, sending the Phantom into a skid. Ye-jun controlled it, barely, and then they were on the coast road, the dark ocean stretching to their left, cliffs rising to their right. "Something's wrong," Ye-jun said suddenly. Valerie felt it too, a subtle change in the car's response, a lag in the acceleration. She pulled out her phone and connected to the car's diagnostic system, her fingers flying across the screen. "They're hacking us," she said, her blood running cold. "The same kill switch, but they're activating it remotely, trying to override your controls. Can you stop it?" Valerie stared at the code scrolling across her screen. The attack was sophisticated, multi-layered, designed to gradually seize control of the vehicle systems. They had maybe 2 minutes before the doors locked and the accelerator went to full throttle. "Not from here," she said. "I need direct access to the ECU, under the hood." Ye-jun's eyes met hers. "We're doing 80 miles an hour." "I know." Behind them, the SUVs were closing in. Ahead, the road curved along the cliff's edge, a sheer drop to the rocks and sea below. "If I lose control," Ye-jun started. "You won't," Valerie interrupted. She was already unbuckling her seatbelt, already calculating angles and wind resistance. "Minho, I need your belt." In the back seat, Minho stripped off his belt without question and handed it forward. Valerie looped it through her dress's waist, then around the door's assist handle. "When I say now, pop the sunroof and hold my legs," she told Ye-jun. "Whatever happens, don't let go." "Valerie, we don't have time to argue." The car lurched again, the hack progressing. The doors clicked, locking. The accelerator began to press down on its own, overriding Ye-jun's inputs. "Now!" The sunroof slid open. Valerie pulled herself up and out, the wind slamming into her like a wall. She felt Ye-jun's hands clamp around her calves as she climbed onto the roof, the car now doing 90, 95, the cliff edge rushing past in a blur. She crawled forward, her hands finding purchase on the wet metal. The belt around her waist was her lifeline, keeping her from flying off as she reached the hood. Getting the hood open at this speed was impossible, but she didn't need to open it fully, she just needed access. Valerie wedged her fingers into the hood's seam and pulled with all her strength. The latch resisted, then gave way with a crack. The hood flew up, and suddenly she couldn't see, couldn't breathe, the wind and the metal and the engine heat overwhelming her senses. She felt blindly for the ECU, found the housing, and slammed her fist into it. The plastic cracked. She hit it again and again until it shattered. Wires spilled out like electronic guts. Valerie grabbed the main harness and yanked, separating the remote access module from the core controls. They immediately began to decelerate, Ye-jun regaining control as the hack's grip broke. But they were still doing 70, and the hood was completely up now, blocking all forward visibility.
I can't see, Ye-jun shouted. Turn right, hard right, Valerie yelled, spotting the curve ahead that he couldn't see. He turned, trusting her completely, and the Phantom's tires screamed as they barely made the corner. Behind them, one of the SUVs wasn't as lucky. It went straight, crashing through the guardrail and tumbling towards the ocean below. Straighten out, 50 feet, then curve left. They were a team now, Valerie's eyes and Ye-jun's hands, dancing along the knife's edge of control and catastrophe. 2 more curves, each one guided by her shouted directions, and then they were on a straight stretch. Slow down, pull over. The Phantom finally stopped on the shoulder, its engine ticking in the sudden silence. Behind them, the remaining SUVs had fallen back, recognizing defeat. Valerie lay on the hood, her whole body shaking, staring up at the stars that had emerged between the clouds. She felt Ye-jun's hands still around her ankles, refusing to let go even though the danger had passed.
"You can release me now," she said, her voice hoarse. "In a minute," he replied. "I need to be sure you're real and not a hallucination." Minho's face appeared in the sunroof. "That," he said with something like awe, "was the most insane thing I've ever witnessed." Valerie started laughing, and once she started, she couldn't stop. She'd just surfed a car hood at highway speeds, dismantled a hack with her bare hands, and survived. She was alive. She was free. She was never going back to those cold streets again. 3 weeks later, Valerie stood in the garage, her garage now, officially, watching the sunrise through the windows that spanned the eastern wall. The space had been reorganized to her specifications, every tool exactly where she wanted it, every system optimized for the work she did best. The door opened, and Ye-jun entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one and stood beside her, both of them watching the light transform the chrome and glass into art. "Marcus Chen and James Nakamura were arrested yesterday," he said quietly. "The evidence you compiled was overwhelming. Industrial espionage, conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering. And Ji-hoon? He'll stand trial in our world, not theirs. The punishment will fit the crime." Valerie sipped her coffee. It was perfect, the way she liked it, which meant Ye-jun had been paying attention. "What about the Kang family?" "We've reached an understanding. Turns out they were as much victims of Nakamura's manipulation as we were. When I showed Kang Min-woo the evidence of the malware in his fleet, he became considerably more cooperative." Ye-jun smiled slightly. "We're not friends, but we're no longer enemies." "So, it's over?" "The immediate threat, yes, but there will be others." He turned to face her. "Which is why I wanted to talk to you about making this permanent." Valerie raised an eyebrow. "I thought I was already fleet overseer." "You are, but I'm proposing something more. A partnership. You handle all technical operations, not just vehicles, but cybersecurity, electronic warfare, digital infrastructure. You'd have complete autonomy, your own budget, your own team." He paused. "And a seat at the table. Equal voice in all major decisions." "You want to make me your partner? A homeless woman you met 3 weeks ago?" "I want to make you my partner because you're the person who climbed onto a car hood at 90 miles an hour to save my life. Because you're brilliant, loyal, and you understand that sometimes the most sophisticated solution involves hitting something until it breaks." His expression softened. "And because you're not homeless, Valerie. You never were. You were just temporarily without a home." Valerie looked around the garage, at the empire of chrome and possibility, at this second chance she'd been given. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 weeks ago, cold and invisible, with nothing but a rusted screwdriver and a genius the world had forgotten. She thought about who she was now. "Partners," she said, extending her hand. Ye-jun took it, and his grip was warm and solid. "Partners." 6 months later, on a cold winter morning, Valerie stood in the same alley behind Giuseppe's bakery where everything had changed. She wasn't here to relive the past. She was here with a purpose.
Beside her, workers were installing a new storefront. The sign above the door read, Sawyer Technical Institute, free automotive training. "You're sure about this?" Ye-jun asked, standing beside her in his trademark black suit. "I'm sure. There are people out there like I was, talented, forgotten, invisible. They don't need charity. They need tools and training and someone who believes in them." The first class would start next week. 20 students, all of them from the streets, all of them with hands that knew how to fix things and minds that understood machines. Valerie would teach them herself, pass on everything she knew. And when they graduated, Ye-jun's organization would give them jobs, real jobs, with real futures. "Your competitors think you're crazy, training people who might work for rivals." "Let them think that," Ye-jun said. "We're building something different here, something that lasts." Valerie watched the sunrise paint the alley in shades of gold, transforming the space that had once been her prison into something new. She'd come full circle, but she wasn't the same person anymore. She was Valerie Sawyer, master mechanic, fleet overseer, partner in one of the most powerful organizations in the city, and survivor of a fall that should have destroyed her. She'd fixed a broken car in the rain and changed her entire world. And now she was going to change the world for others. "Ready?" Ye-jun asked. Valerie smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached her eyes. "I was born ready." Together, they walked toward the future they'd built from wreckage and second chances, from golden limousines and rusted screwdrivers, from trust given and earned and never broken. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, Valerie Sawyer was writing her own ending.